¿Qué hubo, Raza? Newani Joaquin. Bienvenidos to the Gaston Refund Podcast, a podcast about all things Mexican. Today I want to talk to you guys about our indigenous culture. I want to share with you my experiences in regards to our culture in the broader sense, Mexican culture. Some experiences that I've had in Mexico, namely, um, let me see. So one time, this was during COVID. I was in Mexico, and there was lines to get into a convenience store. And what was interesting was, well, let me see. Let me rephrase it. So there was lines to get into the convenience store. They were just letting certain amounts of people at the time. In Mexico, they took the COVID pandemic very seriously. So they would, you had to wipe your feet on something. They would spray your hands, and you had to wear a mask. Anyway, we're waiting in line to get into this convenience store, and when we were gonna be the next ones, a gentleman showed up. He said he wanted to get in, that it was urgent, he had to get back home, whatever. And the store representative said, "I'm sorry, sir, I can't let you in. These people have been waiting in line." And he told him, he said, "You know what? If you wait around a second, in about like 10, 15 minutes, the line is gonna die down. Right now, everyone's out because it's lunch, but in a few minutes, the store is gonna empty out, and you should be able to get in real quick." So the gentleman walked away, and then he came back and he insisted, "Please, sir, let me in." And the young man said, "No, like I said, I can't let you in. It wouldn't be fair to everyone waiting in line." So then the man looked at him in the eye and said to him, "Pinche indio," and then walked away. In another instance, this time we were in Mexico City, and we were waiting in line to use the ATM. And I don't know if you guys, well, I'm sure you guys know if you've been to Mexico, you guys are Mexicanos. I hope you've been to Mexico. If you haven't, you really should. And get your dual citizenship. That's a right of every Mexican American to get their dual citizenship. I digress. I was in Mexico City, and we were waiting in line to use the ATM. In Mexico, you form a line. Then when you get to the ATM, the ATMs are inside booths. You stick in your card. The door opens to the booth, and then it closes behind you, and then you use the ATM in there. So anyway, there was a whole bunch of people waiting in line, and there was a couple, an elderly couple, and if you can imagine, they were modestly dressed, and the woman had long braids, and they were wearing like huaraches, and the people in the line, it was blowing my mind. They were looking at them, and they were all saying, "Estos pinches indios, no, yo no sé qué hacen aquí, no saben leer estos pinches indios, ellos no tienen dinero y nos están haciendo esperar a todos aquí, esto es estúpido, alguien quite estos pinches indios." And it was mind blowing, right? It's and it wasn't just the man who was saying that behind us. Like everyone that was hearing him was also agreeing with him, and that was crazy. Another instance was we were at a movie theater, and this was in Monterrey, and we were at the movie theater, and there was a couple who had a couple really kind of rowdy kids, and they were sitting closer to the screen, and for whatever reason they kept getting, the kids were really like out of control, and then the mom kept taking the kid back and forth in and out of the theater. And then at one point, people were getting upset, began to lose their patience with that family, and they started just calling them indios. And I mean, like, I'm not going to say everyone in the movie theater, but a sizable amount of the people in the theater started hurling racist, anti-Native American, anti-Indio insults at them. "Pinches indios, ¿pa' qué vienen al cine estos pinches indios, like on and on. Like, it was insane, completely insane. So, I mean, and I'm sure you guys know your own, you can share your own encounters with racism in Mexico and how that works. You know, you hear people all the time say when they're referring to family members, oh, él es el más tonto de la familia, él es el que salió más indio, or él es el más feo de la familia, su hermano está güero, pero él está indio, salió feo, salió indio, and on and on. You know what I'm saying. And when you go to Mexico, it's like you watch TV and out there and all the ads and TV, they always show white people, and I've brought it up to like family in Mexico, friends and family, and I'll be like, hey man, this is weird. Everyone's brown here, but on television everybody's white. And then people turned around and looked at me and said, well, what do you want? You want ugly Indios to come out on television? You know, I was like, what the, like, crazy. Like, racism out there is like so normalized, so like every day, you know, it's just part of life out there. People don't even think they're being racist when they make derogatory remarks against indigenous people. The thing that I've noticed is lately there's a lot of, well, I don't want to say a lot. Let me say this. There's black people now and other races that are claiming all things indigenous from Mexico. And, you know, they're talking about the Olmecs being black, the Mayans being black, the Mexicas being black. They actually refer to us as relatively recent immigrants, that they were there first. Rappers like Ice Cube, KRS-One, um, another black rapper from South America. I want to say his name is um, Immortal, Immortal Technician or something like that. Some black guy, a black rapper from somewhere down there from South America, also claims that he alleges that the indigenous people were. He initially came out with an album years ago where he said that he would have killed Moctezuma for siding with Europeans, which is ironic because if you read that, what the Spaniards claim. But the indigenous people, there's an account called La Versión de la Conquista de los Indígenas, and there they say that the Spaniards killed Moctezuma because he wouldn't betray his people. But then the Spaniards say that the indigenous people stoned Moctezuma to death for being a traitor. The funny thing is that this guy, this rapper, would rather believe the Spaniards than the account of the indigenous people, which, you know, goes to show you how idiotic he is. That was years ago. The Mexica movement called him out for that. And now, apparently, most recently, he's talking about how the indigenous people were, that, you know, the Olmecs and the Mexicas and the Mayans were in fact black people and not whatever. The black Africans are the real indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. And the thing I wanted to say is they want to claim everything, and which is very unfortunate. Uh, I wanted to say a swear word, but I'm not going to swear on this podcast. But the thing is that the culture, our culture, our roots, our history, the things that we don't care about. You know, one time I was in Teotihuacan. You know, I always go there. I've been there a million times. Every time I go to Mexico, I always make it. I make it a point to go visit the Great Pyramids at Teotihuacan. They're so amazing. Um, and they have, they have the gift store in there, and they have little figurines and whatnot. And I remember I was in there one time, and some kids, well, they weren't even kids, they were like in their 20s, and they were making fun of each other, talking about how they resembled the, like they said, los bonitos de barro, like the little figurines. They were making fun of each other, saying, haha, you look like them. So what I'm saying is that the culture that we know nothing about, the culture that we don't care about, that we throw away, other people are trying to snatch it up and claim it for themselves. I was reading an article the other day online about how these Spaniards say that the song Cielito Lindo, which is almost like a Mexican anthem written by a Mexican composer, was actually a Spanish song. And then another guy from another country was claiming that enchiladas were really not Mexican, that they came from another country. And then this other black guy wrote a book about how Jose Maria Morelos, Vicente Guerrero, Miguel Hidalgo, all these revolutionary heroes, these independence heroes, they were in fact actually black. The thing is that if you talk to the average Mexican and the average Mexican American, they wouldn't even know who Jose Maria Morelos is and Miguel Hidalgo and you know Antonio Maria Melendres and all these amazing, truly amazing, inspiring, um, you know, characters in Mexican history, Mexican American history. We don't care for them. We don't care to learn about them, but boy, do other people wish they had them, and they go as far as lying and claiming that they're theirs. Let me say that, in all fairness, 90% of black people out there, African Americans, they don't subscribe to that. They don't believe that the Olmecs were black and that the Mayans were black. They think that all of that is foolish, that it's ridiculous, that it's stupid, that it's completely groundless. But needless to say, there is this very vocal, very loud group of blacks and others that are there to steal our culture. But then again, we don't care for our culture. There was this book and it had a picture of Jose Maria Morelos on the front, and then the title was something about black leaders in Latin America, and they had Jose Maria Morelos on the cover. There's so many straight up blacks, like in Latin America, that are legit blacks. I don't know why they had to put Jose Maria Morelos on the cover, but they did. But I showed that around to friends, and they didn't know who that was on the cover. So, like I said, the stuff we don't care about, others are willing to take it. In Mexico, I had a friend that I met in college, and I told him that I was studying Nahuatl. He didn't believe me. He gave me this weird look. It turns out that he actually spoke Nahuatl. He learned it from his grandmother, his parents too, but his grandparents raised him. And he couldn't believe that I was trying to study Nahuatl. He was actually embarrassed to speak Nahuatl. The census says that Nahuatl is the most spoken Native American language in all of North America. Um, that it's considered a second language in Mexico. So many people speak it. The census says that over 1.5 million people in Mexico speak Nahuatl, but in fact that number is way bigger because most people would say they don't speak it. They're so embarrassed to speak Nahuatl. That's sad, but that is the reality. The culture that we don't pay any respects to, that we're embarrassed about, that we aren't interested in at all, other people are willing to snatch it up. And Mexicans would rather be anything, would rather even call themselves black than calling themselves indigenous. Like I said, my friend in college, he was straight up indigenous. He spoke Nahuatl, came from an indigenous community, but he said he was black, and he said that the proof that he was black is that he loved salsa music and he could dance salsa really good. That's the reality. So before you get mad at black people for stealing our culture, you should get mad at our own people for being ignorant and stupid about our history, our roots, and our culture.